Hi, I'm Imogen Lamport from Inside Out Style.
And I'm Jill Chivers from shopyourwardrobe.com.
Now, one of the things we were thinking about was whether or not, we've talked before about signature styles. And so was there a moment where it clicked that you'd found your style, and how's it actually changed how you shop and how you get dressed?
Well, I think this click moment is really important because it can literally feel like you've walked through a door into a space where everything's clear and what's behind you was murky or grey in some way. And for me, finding my signature style represents that. Although it was more of a slow dawning than a bright aha, it was dark and now it was light moment for me. It was more sort of like walking down a tunnel where it got increasingly lighter, where I kept adding animal prints to what I was wearing and finding myself gravitating to those. So my very first item of animal print clothing was a scarf, a very cheap polyester chiffon-like scarf, which I still have, which I bought when I was 22, and it felt very racy and risque and rebellious at the time. I was working for a big global consulting firm, doing very important work, and it was not really the kind of item that you would see in a world of navy suits and maroon ties. And that was just the women. And so for me, it has been a real eye-opening moment to recognise that animal print will always work for me. That doesn't mean I always have to buy it when I see it. In fact, that's an important lesson for me, that I don't always have to buy it when I see it. But when I do, I'm very certain that it will work for me. And that's important financially. It's also important emotionally and psychologically, because one of the things that I believe weighs women down with their wardrobes is having a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and they don't know why. They don't know why it doesn't work for them. You must see this all the time.
Yes, and look, and some of it comes back to that does it suit my body or not. Very often, I know for me, my kind of aha moment was actually more related to my body. And I was 16 and I was in a store and I tried on a beautiful pinafore. And my friend tried on exactly the same dress, and we tried on the same size. And we both could get it on our bodies.
Right.
But it looked good on her, it looked terrible on me. And I remember thinking, why? Like, why does it look so bad?
Yeah.
And then I thought there must be something about my body shape that makes this not the right shape for me. And at the time, I used to sew a lot of my clothes, and I worked out, you spent hours sewing, and then it looked terrible. That I learned that, one shape worked and a different shape didn't work. And that was when I started going, okay, well, there's certain rules that make it work for me.
There's a system at play here.
Yeah, I need to know what works and what doesn't work for me, because otherwise it's just a waste.
Yeah.
And I think for many women too, like whether it's a signature print, whether it's, colour, whether it's just some sort of element. And I know when I did my training, I had another aha moment when I learned about personality styles. And I thought, no wonder I can only wear sneakers when I'm running. Because my personality is not... I like to have feminine feet, and it's something that I just don't enjoy wearing those sorts of and I can't, I don't feel comfortable even going down the shops in a pair of sneakers.
Yeah.
Even if I'm just whizzing in and out. Because to me, it's not part of my style. Yeah. And I think that, sometimes you have these moments and you think, well, why do I not like wearing them? And because I used to feel like I should wear them because everybody else was wearing them. And so there's often that should... weighing down on you. And when you start to actually get rid of those things, you go, that works for me and that doesn't work for me, and I feel free. And that's when you start feeling really good in your clothes.
Yeah. And what you're also referring to as well is those external pieces of information, sometimes suggested as rules or guidelines, what's in at the moment, versus knowing for yourself what works for you. And the older I get, the more that is the important concept, is how good do I feel in this? The relationship between me and the clothes, not the clothes and fashion, is incredibly important. And I think that's also something, when you've had your click moment, sometimes you don't quite recognise it, and they're important to recognise. They're important to recognise that moment when you shifted from not knowing to knowing something that's true for you.
Yes. And so do you think that this has influenced, say, your worst or your best investments? Like, so tell us about the worst thing you ever bought.
Oh, there's a lot, but probably the most memorable is something I spent 2 pays on when I worked for Deloitte, and it was this baby pink pressed suit, and this was in the 1990s, so we still had shoulder pads. It was double-breasted, not great for my shape, and a big cuff, and this sort of the colour of a pink musk peppermint kind of thing. And look, I tried every way from Sunday to make that suit work. Worn together, it looked like well-pressed pajamas. Worn apart, it just kind of, it was hopeless. And I spent so much money on it and I hung on to it for so long, but I never got that suit to work. And at the time, I had no idea why. I mean, it was in, right? It was in queue.
So what made you buy it? Was it just because it was in fashion?
Yes, this was in my unconscious everything days, not just my unconscious shopping days. I didn't know anything about the guidelines about colour or style or any of those kinds of things. I tell you what did work about it was the sense of tailoring. I've always loved tailoring and that sort of classic-y, like a blazer. I want to be buried in a blazer. I love that kind of thing, and that really worked. And that may well have blinded me to all the other qualities that made it not work.
So what is one of your best investments, do you think?
Well, I find that hard to answer from a single item perspective. And some people might be able to say, look, here's the thing that I bought that was the best for me. For me, it comes back to signature style and recognising that, because I know that anything I buy will work for me in that regard. And of course, now I have a lot more information to add to the pile in terms of shape and contrast and those kinds of things that make every purchase a sure thing. And that's really important to me, because I've wasted a lot of money and psychological energy and time buying stuff I couldn't possibly have worn or needed. And sometimes they were animal print. They just didn't quite work for me. But so anything animal print has an investment quality to it, in that I know it will work for me.
Yes.
What about you? What has been an investment piece for you?
So for me, I think one of my early experiences was that I only ever shop sales, and there's a whole psychological reason to that. And so the first thing I actually bought full price. And I remember I was in a store, and and it was $150, which for me at the time was a lot of money. We're talking back in the early 90s, where $150 was much more than it is today. And it was this, kind of but really good quality, kind of long sleeved black top, really. And it was made of a fabric that didn't need ironing and wash and oil, but it still looked smart, and it wasn't just a regular knit. And I can tell you, I had that for a good decade, I think, and I wore it with everything, and it just worked. And I think that was my first experience too, of that it's not always a waste of money. If I was brought up where you had to save money and you bought things on sale, and so I basically only looked at things that were on the sale rack. It was full price. I didn't even look at it. So buying this, I remember at the time thinking, oh my gosh, but it turned into, because it was something that fitted with my lifestyle, it fitted with my colouring, it fitted with my shape, it basically, and it worked with I could dress it up, dress it down, it was versatile. So therefore, it was something that actually had great value in my wardrobe. And I think it's when you start thinking about what are the questions you ask before you buy something, it's going to make a big difference to whether or not that piece is actually going to earn its place in your wardrobe. And maybe that's another video.
It is. But maybe you could tell us in the comments, what was your click moment? What has been a mistake for you? And what have been investment pieces for you? We'd love to know what your experiences are of those things.